Okay, record. All right. Okay. So this is one of these crazy days when I have 4 artists on a call because they're all super shy and they needed to kind of come in a pack. Just kidding. They're not shy. So we have Foster Grissom this afternoon. We've got Raj. Just say it, Raj.
Chaudhry rhymes with Audrey. Very easy.
Chaudhry, it's easy, people. It's easy. We've got Kwang Ho and we've got Dan Sprick. So because we have 4 artists, I'm going to just dive right in. And, Kwang seems like he has a good connection right now. Kwang, should we just start with you?
Sure.
All right.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, okay. So Kwang tells us that he's out doing some landscape reconnaissance, but we're not falling for it. He is actually out probably looking for mushrooms and or fossils.
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 But I'm visiting family in Kentucky area, and this is one of the richest fossil areas in the whole world. And the fossils here are the age where this is before there were vertebrates on the planet. Think about that. That was before there were fish on it. So wow. 450 million years old, and we're driving by these road cuts are unbelievable. So yeah. So besides that, I could still do this though.
Did you find any today?
Oh, absolutely. Some beautiful brachiopods, like perfect seashells, like perfect fossilized shells. Although if I have one, I'll They're amazing, right?
Yeah. So this is why, as a curator, I pull my hair out because.
Yeah, look at this. This is a perfect fossilized brachiopod in my little hand right here. Wow. At least 400 million years old, maybe 350, something like that.
Wow.
Okay, go ahead. Talk about art.
No, okay. So this is why I pull my hair out, because where in the world is Kwang Ho? I don't know. Oh, he's looking for fossils.
This enriches my studio time.
Yes, I bet it does. I bet it does. Hey, I am going to do a screen share because really what we want to talk to each of you about today is the work that's in the show. And so Kwang, you are you're up first. And I decided to pull Kwang up first because I just don't know when we're going to lose him.
Oh,
in this call. That's just how it goes. So are you guys, can you see let me see, let me do my screen share again. Let me just get,
you can see, yeah, you just
you can?
Out of the way, and now we're looking at artsy.net.
Oh, don't look at artsy. Let's look at Kwang. Yeah, that's what I do with my days. I'm on artsy.net.
Yeah, that's it. I can see that my chicken coop painting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. That was an experience. I visited Bill Sorenson's ranch 20-something years ago. And I remember there was a chicken coop. And that, of course, brought me back to when I was a child in Vietnam. But, I just remember how there's a certain feel to a chicken coop with all of the messiness of it, and the texture and the smell. So I painted one about 20 years ago, and I wondered if I could do it better today, and with more experience as an artist and what I could bring into it. So I brought it back and I painted it with much more imagination than I did the first time I painted it. So I was able to impart a whole lot more interpretation and a lot more freedom with it. And this feels more like what it was to me.
Oops,
that makes sense?
There you wait, repeat that again. We lost you at this feels more like.
Oh yeah, this feels more like what the experience was to me back then, So I mean, I literally had invented some of the areas around the chicken instead of painting exactly what I saw there. but it was more the feeling. I took things away and added, so adding values and texture that would enhance the whole experience. Like I darkened that red area, darkened the dirt a little bit more to enhance the chicken. But it was like the chicken coopness of the whole thing. It's like, just that one experience. And I doubt that I'll ever paint another one. It was like one thing. Sometimes it's like this for me. I paint an experience that I've had that intrigued me, and then I may not visit it again for 20 years like this. So it was interesting.
So you know what? Let me ask you, and this is, I think, a question for all the artists on this call, because you return to subject matter. And I'm wondering if you would kind of, like, you're talking about why you would return to subject matter. And I think it's a really subtle thing, in particular with these chickens, and one that it was at Bill Sorensen's ranch. So there's this real fondness to that. But then there's also this kind of digging back into memory. And I'm wondering, is that really the part of it when you revisit something, like doing something better? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I'm just beginning now to realize that I do want to revisit the things. When I do a painting in the past, I might have been, I don't do it unless it stirs me in some emotional way. But 30 years later, 20 years later, I have more experience as a painter. So why wouldn't I want to revisit that and see what else I can bring on top of that besides just rendering it, as like recording it. Now I want to bring some art on top of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's more interpretation. So yes. So rather than going around looking for new subject to paint, I feel like it's all around me anyway. But some of the things that were more meaningful to me in the past, that moved me in some way, I'm like, wow, I need to go revisit that again and see how I would paint it today if I were to visit that. So in a way, it's a lot more interesting to me now.
Is this so in kind of repainting or revisiting, for example, the chicken coop? What was the impetus of that? Was it just the show?
Oh, you know what's funny? I was just going through my portfolio of thousands and hundreds of thousands of photographs, and it popped back up.
Oh.
And so I'm like, oh, I remember that. I wonder how I would paint it again today. That's all. That's how it happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's all it was. You could leave it.
Hey, talk about the Meyer lemons. This is also a theme that you revisit as well, I think.
Yeah, well, this is a theme that I'm visiting over and over again because what's happening is, oh, can you hear me still? Somebody was trying to call me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what was happening was, when I love fruit on trees, they're really beautiful to me. So with the lemons, I've done a number of them, and each one's a little bit different than the other. Some are very, very flat. Other ones are like classical Rembrandt painting. Other ones are fractalized, like a Richard Diebenkorn type of painting. So I take a subject like that. This one was actually painted on location when I was there. Just a little study, a little 12 by 16 study, 9 by 12. So that was painted from life. Just a quick study. Yeah.
So I've also seen you do these with a tree branch laden or the fruit. And God, there's one that some collectors who come to the core show have, and it's just the floating. They're like floating almost, a meditation on. This is really fun.
Yeah. Well, they're like I said, I try to do them. I try to, I don't try to, but I'm always curious as how else I could do it. So, but each time I try a different way, I take it as far as I can, you know what I mean? So, I would have probably served me better in my life if I just stick to one way of painting and just go with it. But I'm just too darn curious. So I'm trying to figure out. I just have fun with it. It's really what it is.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of nice to see you play with these subject matters as well, too, because I don't think, when people have a mental vision of Western artists, you know what? All four of you do not pop up in mind right from the start, right? And so even with this painting, Bunch of Kids, you're bringing that that just playfulness, I think that is really kind of a hallmark of your work these days, a real kind of playfulness with it.
Yes, thank you. Why this is again, whenever I drive by a bunch of cows, I always have to smile because they're so darn cute. But they're fascinating to me because you stop, you take a picture, and they all clump up and they look at you like this, and, and so, but they're really beautiful. So doing the chicken, just one thing led to another, so that's why I was playing with this.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Last year I had a big painting like this for the Prix de West show, a bigger one, longer, and there were more black cows, and they just create a really interesting design. I just think they somehow they one cow by itself is not that interesting, but a whole bunch of them together, they make for a really interesting lineup. So that's what I'm playing with.
well, you know what, and I think it's really kind of an interesting thing as well to be an artist from, you're originally from Vietnam. And so, and I think this is just, it's always such a fascinating thing because a lot of artists say that these paintings, and I think this is an artist who's been working for some time. These paintings are self-portraits in a way. And so for you to bring in the, what you grew up with, especially with the chickens, and kind of bring back memories of your past. And now you're a dad, so you get to, watch your son learn and explore and make his own memories in his head. That must be really, really fun.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see how he looks at the world. But that was a nice pull in because it's true. I grew up with chickens and cows and roaming everywhere,
Yeah.
And it's naturally it's a little connection there, even probably subconsciously.
Yeah. Well, I think it has to be, right? I think so. Okay, Kwong. Well, I would say go nowhere, but I think that's just ridiculous because you are going somewhere. But if
I'm going nowhere.
but if you can hang out, stay.
Yeah, I will.
And
I will.
Hey, I'm gonna put the spotlight on Raj. Yeah, Raj is brand spanking new to the show. So welcome to the show. He's in his glorious studio in Denver, and I love that space. It's really inspirational. I had kind of thought about moving in actually, except it smells like terpenoid.
There's a story behind the space, actually, if I can quickly share.
Yeah, tell us.
Many years ago, probably 10 years ago, Dan was sitting in my kitchen. We were drawing still lifes, just talking about, artist stuff. And he's like, Raj, you've got to put a studio on top of that garage.
Oh.
And I've been thinking about it, and that was really the inspiration. You remember that, Dan?
Yeah, I do.
And during construction, just 2 seconds on it, we'd walk up because it's, we popped the roof on it, and there was a ladder, and Dan likes high spaces. So we would climb up and check it out and just have a good time. So just FYI.
Did we go up on the roof while it was, before it was actually built?
Yes, we did. Yes.
Yeah.
On the top, yes.
Yeah, that's the views. Looking down, and it's so nice to get really good light up there.
Yeah.
Knocks off your house.
Very privileged.
And
Dan absolutely does like high spaces. I've never thought of that, but like if he had a clock tower, he'd be up there in a minute,
I'm kind of with you though on the high spaces. I'd rather be up than down in water or something like that. Anyway. Yeah. And in fact, Dan has a new painting we'll maybe take a look at that is really sort of gives you a sense of vertigo. A number of these new paintings, not that we have in the show, but if you're one of the fortunate people who gets to hang out in Dan studio and paint on Wednesdays, or who gets to just bring your laptop and hang out and type, which is me sometimes, you get to see some of the new work that's coming out of Dan's studio, which is nice. So we'll take a look here, hopefully in a few minutes. But so Raj is a Denver artist, not originally from Denver, but I always going to tell people this. I I've been watching your work for over a decade, as you were at the Art Students League and really growing and trying a lot of new things. And curatorially, when I like to bring an artist into a show is when I see them really kind of hitting their stride and doing work that has their own kind of fingerprint on it versus work that has a lot of heavy influence from whomever you're studying with at the time. And so this latest body of work I'm very intrigued by. And in particular, and there's a painting over your shoulder that looks like a new one you're working on of your daughter at the Grand Canyon. And so I want to start with the Grand Canyon pieces. And a Grand Canyon for artists who paint in the Western United States or even visit the West, and it's really a big theme. It's something that people love to tackle. It's like the most beautiful mosaic. And I'm wondering if you would kind of talk about it and your approach to it and how, and I'm going to screen share too, but let's go ahead and talk about these particular paintings. And why the Grand Canyon? Because it really is a topic that you have to you've got to bring it.
So for sure. I firstly, I really appreciate being part of the show. It's been a lifelong goal of mine, and I'm really excited to be part of it. It takes a while. Firstly, art's hard. I mean, I'm passionate about it and you learn from it, but it takes a while to find your voice. And to me, I feel like art is, it needs to be authentic to me. It's my experience, how I see beauty, how I see emotion and a story in almost every piece that I'm working on. Been to the Grand Canyon a few times, especially this last year over COVID. It was wonderful to spend several days there in a camper and with my family, with Bela and Christy, just walking it, doing a bunch of still, some on the spot, plein air pieces. I think this painting in particular, I know the Grand Canyon's been painted many ways, but I feel like I can say something that's mine, from a color standpoint, the way I put paint down, and also the emotion, just when you're in there, it's so serene, it's so vast, there's microcosms and these massive macrocosms there as well as, and how we interact with it. And I'm also fascinated with coming up with the right story, the way the shapes are, just from a design standpoint. And so this particular painting is a result of a couple of on the spot plein air pieces, and then a compilation of 10 or 15 or maybe even 20 photographs. And in fact, Bela is taking this picture here. She's wearing different kinds of clothes. She's flipped over. I've combined mountains from one side, rocks from the other side, just to say the right story. So that's this piece and the next one as well from that standpoint.
So for me, curatorial, looking at the work, and if we just stay with sort of this Grand Canyon theme and how many times it's really been painted and created and recreated and seen. To me, I think the beauty in this series of work that you have is that you inserted your daughter in the work, and I love how you did it, where it's almost like she's part of the scene. She's taking a picture, but she's also just being completely enveloped in the scene. And I think that for me, looking at the work, that's what elevates this piece. And one, it makes it incredibly personal. But two, it also just sort of weaves this in, and just looking at the painting really makes me think about a lot of things of like, what is our responsibility to the Grand Canyon? What's our responsibility to the earth? And how are we raising our children? And that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if you'd speak to that a little bit, and especially, being a transplant, of course, you've been here for many years, but being a transplant like Quang from another place.
Very well put. Really very good observations on that. And it was very intentional. I wanted, if you squint at the painting, you'll see these shadow shapes kind of going through the painting, and then her backpack and her shorts and a shadow of her, and the way the shadows form with the sun and with the rocks and everything else. It was very intentional, kind of fading her into the background. This painting is really, it's a personal view of the Grand Canyon. It's my experience. It's how, in the US of A, we're so blessed to have, this amazing set of national parks and state parks. And it just, especially growing up in India, where, it's a wonderful country with a beautiful heritage and colors, and the people are really the story there. But here, just, the vastness of land is just, it's so overwhelming to me that hiking it, this is Bright Angel Trail. You'll see it kind of in the bottom middle part of the painting as you're walking down. And the crazy part of the Grand Canyon is within, like we started an early morning hike, we probably walked about 3-4 hours down and back up. We had 4 weather systems come across you, clouds, land, and you look on one side, the weather system's different from what you're looking at in the middle. And to capture that, it's quite something. And I'm very pleased with the way this one turned out.
Yeah. So how do you, and let's ask the same question that I asked of Kwong, but how do you bring your past and who you are and how you grew up into this work?
So two answers to that. One is, I think, and I make this analogy to my students with the way music works. It's, to me, I don't think, and this is again a personal opinion, art's not done in a vacuum. I think whether we like it or not, it's tied to the past, and I want to embrace that. So I mean, a lot of these paintings, from a design standpoint, are kind of inspired by, for example, N.C. Wyatt's, the miner in front of the mountains, and that vein of Western art.
Mm-hmm.
So that influences me a lot. And then in terms of, I want to kind of capture my experience with what's going on. I love this one here is at Sea Lazy Ranch with the horses kind of running by. They've done their work, and in the evening, they're off to the meadows to have a munch, and they're just kind of going as fast as they can to go get their food. So my experience is really with, I want to find a strong emotional connection with my work and say a story. And I don't want to go looking for that work, specifically, because I don't want it to be contrived. So my Indian experience is very authentic, as well as my Western experience, because I've almost lived here longer than I've lived in India, even though those were my formative years.
Yeah.
And I feel like I really enjoy, people interacting with livestock, with animals, and the landscape. That's kind of fascinating for me, both in India as well as here in Colorado in the West.
So when you go back to India, do you paint there as well?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I paint there, and in fact, this is one of the things as artists, we can carry our oil paints, but it's always hard to find the Gamsol or the terpenoid, because that's combustible and you can't fly with it. So that's a constant challenge for all of us, kind of getting everywhere.
Yeah, thank you for not flying with that.
Yeah, no. It's just so you have to. In fact, with your paints too, there's something called the material safety data sheet that I print out and keep with the paints, so people know when they check it, it's not combustible. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on, stay where you are. I'm gonna pop on over to, I'm gonna jump over to Dan Sprick. Stay where you are, Raj. Dan, okay, so, and I'm just gonna warn you all out there listening, Dan and I can actually talk for hours and hours. So I'm in the process of transcribing a conversation that you and I had, Dan, 3-4 weeks ago, I think, in your studio. And it's just, as I'm going back and listening to it and getting to the part where we were talking about you, and we don't have these in the show, but when recent or not too long ago show at the Denver Art Museum, you had a number of paintings of homeless men in that show. And so we were talking about this idea of ugly beauty, and how you look at the world, and what you're trying to bring to it. And I want to share these two works that we have in the show, but you were talking about how you're exploring, and it's just an endless exploration of beauty in the work. And I think that kind of caught me off guard, because when people talk about beauty in art, you think of gorgeous landscapes or still lifes of flowers or something. And I'm wondering if you would talk about your idea of beauty and that search.
Well, I'll try to start. It can actually transcend subject matter. And there's a couple ways of looking at beauty. It's not to disregard subject. And I don't have any attraction toward anti-aesthetic subjects. And that could take a while to define what that really means. But to me, what art is, painting specifically, it's just patches of light and dark on a rectangle. And it's been done for a long time. And some of those patches, may be representational of, recognizable images. Some of them may not be, but what really, I think, I hope, kind of activates the brain's reward centers are patterns that are just right in their rhythmic repetition and compositional proportions. And it's an aspect of painting that has, I think, historically, it's only been started. It hasn't been finished, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Even in spite of all of the phenomenal works historically throughout time, I think it's just been started. There's only, I tell Kwong, I think that there's unexplored territory,
Yeah.
continents out there that I'm not even sure if they exist, but I'm going looking for them.
Jen Starling is asking, do you think that is subjective? Yeah.
If what is subjective?
I think, Jen, if you want to clarify, but maybe what is left to explore, the beauty of it.
Yeah, he mentioned sort of the rhythms that people respond to. And I'm wondering, Dan, if you think that is somewhat universal?
Well, I think that it is, that there's a remarkable consensus on, actually intuitively arrived at, is that you'll just respond to things that have, placement and interval in such a way that it resonates with you on some subconscious level that provides enjoyment. Now, say with music, it's pretty obvious when, to the listener of music, that when something has an emotional, captivates the listener emotionally. And it's a little less obvious, I think, in painting, or maybe it happens less frequently, but I think it's essentially a comparable principle. And what I strive is to establish these displacement and interval and in big compositional shapes and lesser shapes that activate some kind of pleasure center in the human brain.
Wow.
And why does it do so? Maybe it's on some ethereal link. It's not really not conscious or rational, not rational.
Dan, part of what we were talking about, and I'm going to do a screen share here with your work, but part of what we were talking about in that conversation a month ago was you have been reading the Bible and looking at it, more in like an anthropological, scientific way, right?
Well, literary and historic, and it's a record as to, how people perceive the world based on what they knew at the time.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that apply to today, such as the us and them division. Oh, that is just all the way through the Bible, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm getting way off track with art.
That's okay.
The reason it makes sense to me is that historically, in spite, with all the threats to survival, such as predators, drought, famine, thirst, by far the biggest threat to humans was other humans.
Yeah.
And invading tribes, and so the whole us versus them mentality was a survival necessity. Actually, well, see, now in the 20th century, generally speaking, except for the shooting last night, in places I go to, near Kwang's place, generally speaking, it's safe to walk down the street. Nobody's going to attack you. And I mean, it's extremely safe. Our world is safer than it's ever been, but those instinctive behaviors persist. And there's, oh God, I'm going way down the rabbit hole here. But say, for example, people won't get vaccinated for political reasons.
Right.
It's us versus them. It has nothing to do with rational thought processes. And so tying back to the Bible, little or nothing to do with rational thought processes. It was just that it was much more, you had a better survival chance if you would bond with your in-group, identify with your in-group, exclusively, and see all else as subhuman, adversaries. And unfortunately, that was carried over today to our society's detriment. I'm going way off track.
No. But I actually want to kind of pull it into these two paintings that you brought, because, and I'm glad you're saying these things, because I think it kind of goes back to this idea that these are self-portraits in a sense, the work that an artist does, and sort of the honest, authentic work that an artist does, brings in a lot of these philosophical questions. And I think certainly an artist who has been working at the easel as long as you have, and the evolution of your paintings, I think, you're an artist who you can pick out a Dan Sprick painting over time, but the evolution is more in the thought process and what you're selecting. And for example, you have a show coming up with Gerald Peters in New York in February, I think, and these are small interiors that you did over the time of COVID, right?
Yes.
And so these interior spaces are something that I think that people really look at with your work, and can just spend hours and hours just going through and considering what's there and other things unfold. I'm wondering if you would talk about this piece and how this one came into being. And I love, it's kind of different in my mind because of the open space.
It's one way it came up. Still have these gourds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which I got them a few months ago at the outdoor market part of Whole Foods. Anyway, I think they're kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, so that's how recent this painting is. all this is, I'd say still life painting in general is just a meditation on the nature of existence itself and, material existence and how, what we perceive may or may not be real, but it's convincing. It seems real to our five senses.
Yeah.
And it's a joy for me to forget, all about, social and political and, I'm not thinking about social justice at the moment when I'm painting the still life. I'm just exploring the nature of existence and perception and trying to generate this harmony that I was talking about, which is, interval placement, quiet spaces, active spaces, textures, and I may or may not have succeeded. That's a whole different matter. But it's an attempt to generate, for lack of a better word, a harmony of the spheres or a harmony of little tiny objects. It's a coalescence of patterns, and that when some people see it in person, they'll get a little electrical charge, a little jolt in the heart that feels good. And if that happens from a painting, I think the artist is successful.
It's interesting, Dan, it's probably been 30 years ago now when I worked for Carol Seipel in her gallery in downtown Denver, and you were showing work there, and you had a large downtown cityscape from looking down from a high rise.
Yeah.
And there were no cars and no people. It was kind of interesting because it was downtown and people would walk by and they're like, oh, wow, that's right here. But then if they stood there long enough, they're like, wait a second, where is everybody? Like it was a little like put you back on your heels a bit, because it was like, where did the people go? And
I believe you remember that. That was really a long time.
it was. Well, I'll tell you why. Part of the reason that painting sticks out in my mind, a young art student was in, I didn't know who he was and still don't to this day, but backpack on and was walking around, and he came up to that painting and he stood there and then he started crying.
Oh.
It was the most fascinating thing, because it's exactly what you're talking about. Something happened inside of him and he was completely overcome. And then he left, and it was just so whatever happens in art, and I think for that person, and for this is kind of what I'm really enjoying talking to you about and on these artist calls, is that whatever's happening in what you're doing with the surface, with the work and how you're bringing it and creating it, something also touches people. I think is what you're getting at, is that it also touches people, and maybe it's the rhythms or the harmonies, or there's something in there that is non-verbally communicated, right?
In fact, to talk about rhythms and harmonies, it's really just my way to reverse engineer what's happening in a picture, really, so that artists, so I can understand what happens in a successful picture, and so other artists can too, and to try to use, an intuitive kind of distribution of pattern to unlock this key of transcendent beauty. That's the goal. And I wouldn't claim to be successful, but that's the goal.
Hey, will you talk about this one, and will you tell me about the titles, because titles have become very important, I think, right?
Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, there's a title. Well, all my deathbed regrets fit into a small gift.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of in a mood, and it depends what I'm reading at the time, or if people I know are on their deathbed. There's all sorts of things that factor into a moment, and often it's really a struggle for me to come up with interesting titles.
Mhm.
But this one just sort of landed in my lap. It could be, still life with dish and egg, shallot, and
Yeah.
still life with Ganesh, or, things like that. And those are descriptive titles, and they're straightforward. And if anything, I think some of my titles are at the risk of pretension. So, and I'm aware of that. But so, will all my deathbed regrets fit into a small bit? Well, I hope they will. That's what I hope. I hope this may fit in a real small bit. So how do we make that happen? We don't waste time. We live large while we can. So we know the clock's ticking. We don't have forever. And our skills are gonna, we have them now, they will deteriorate to where they go away completely. And everything will go away completely. Existence is temporary. And so I think gather ye rosebuds while you may.
Yeah. And that's something we talked about the other day too, is how time is short, right? And God, you're in your studio, what, 9 to 9 every day, or?
Oftentimes.
Mhm.
12-hour days.
Yeah.
You know what? Nobody's making it. It's just that it's my preferred activity. It's, if I'd rather go out and do something else, I'd do it. But there's actually, I feel so compelled by the fact and encouraged by the fact that I make incremental progress still after, gosh, I don't know how long I've been doing this. 40, maybe close to 50 years I've been doing this. I can't keep count. And what keeps me encouraged, what keeps me going, is the fact that I'm still making progress.
Yeah.
And basically it's growth is, and further insight.
Mhm.
And I hope I'm not deluding myself, because it could be. But I think that there's growth, and there's just more and more subtle and more ecstatic forms of beauty.
Let me ask you about the insight, and then I'm gonna put Foster in the hot seat. But you said growth and insight. Is this insight into yourself, insight into human nature?
You know what? I wish it were that grandiose, but it's really just insight into, pattern and distribution that can generate some sort of what I hope could possibly be described as a transcendent experience. So, I guess I think that there's more to this life than meets the eye. And so what I hope to tap into, just pull the veil apart just a little bit and see, get more of an idea of what connects all these loose ends of material existence.
Mhm. Okay, Dan, I'm going to take you off the hot seat here, and don't go anywhere.
Okay.
I'm going to bring Foster in, who is roving. You're just wandering. I've been watching you wander. Are you?
I'm in Nashville, visiting my family, and
Nice.
my niece is like 1 year old, and she's got up from a nap. So I've been trying to find like a place that doesn't have a toddler doing toddler business,
Right.
So I'm now outside, and yeah.
Very nice. Wow, good. Hey, I want to remind everybody who's out there listening in, if you have questions for anybody, please put them in the chat and I'll read them out loud. And so Foster, for the people who are on the call early, you had mentioned when we were talking about what we were going to talk about, that I think you had mentioned you're having some struggles going on. And you know what? Let's talk about them.
All right.
Do it.
Yeah, I didn't know we were like live.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a recap of the year. Winning best of show last year was awesome. Definitely changed my, life a lot as far as demand for my work and keeping the galleries happy and finishing commissions and stuff like that. I'm also like a historic, last minute procrastinator. And I had planned to do this big body of work of just nocturnes, all night paintings. And I went up to a rodeo, in Granby. It's called the Flying Hills Rodeo.
Mhm.
And I was all excited to do this work, and I turned out a bunch of night paintings, but there's just something wrong with them. There's just they weren't show ready. So they're all just still sitting in the studio. What I found myself doing is like, managing, I guess, anxiety. Sometimes if I'm working on a piece I think's going somewhere, I like to do in between a piece that's just for me, just for fun.
Mhm.
And these 4 paintings I've put in the show were all ones that I never planned to, put in the show, but they were like my little reward paintings in between the ones I was working on. So that's what we have.
You know what? So I'm going to do a screen share, but I'm thinking of 2 things that have come up in these talks and in my conversations with artists. One is the pressure to get work ready for a show. And Dan and I were actually talking about that. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you won't commit to a show till you have the work done, right?
So that way there is no pressure. And so you can't do artwork under deadlines and
Yeah.
expect, sorry, Foster. I can't, I'll qualify that. I can't. And expect to do my best work.
Mhm.
Because I don't know how long it's going to take. Oftentimes I'm still messing with it a year or 2 later, after I thought it was done in the first place. And I keep finding ways to make it more, give it a greater impact. That's the hope. And and I'd say most times I succeed, but sometimes I actually make it worse. And that's just the chance you take.
Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah. So I just wanted to chime in there, like as a curator. So, I'm working with 75 artists on this show, and I can tell you I had 3 artists this year who are planning on doing the show that we ended up having conversations, and they said, I can't get the work. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Come back next year with it. And so I think that's an interesting thing. And so I also love, Foster, that what you're saying here, this is the work you did for yourself. And I think for the astute connoisseur and collector out there, they always have an eye out for the work the artist does for him or herself. And another aspect of these conversations I was having, I asked a group of artists, it was the Call with Jill Sokup, and we were talking about, do some paintings, are they just not ready to happen yet? Do you just need more something, more experience, more time, more? And all 3 artists said, yeah, they just, sometimes it's a decade before a painting will actually happen, before I have enough knowledge or insight to do that work. So, Foster, since we're on this topic, I would love for you to talk about these paintings you did for yourself.
Sure. Happy to. So this one was really fun to paint. This was one of 3. I was commissioned by a couple in the Springs area to do a portrait of their 2 horses. And I did 3 iterations of the commission because I knew like I would be excited to do any paintings of these horses. And anyway, this was my favorite of the bunch that I showed them. I showed them at like the 50% mark. And it's more of a painter's painting. Like it's not as like romantically charged to the identity of the horse. It's more about the design and the, exposed canvas and just the brush strokes and stuff like that. It's a lot more visually exciting, but it's also not like a intimate portrait of a specific horse.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up wanting the painting that I thought that, like, I was very shocked that they're like, we want this one. And I was like, yeah, then I get to keep my favorite.
Wow.
I was really happy to keep working on it. And yeah, it's a fun painting. Like it's got a lot of elements that I really love. And this thing just like flowed really quickly. It was one of those paintings that feels automatic almost.
Mhm.
Ugh, that headshot. We need to fix that.
All right, let's go. Oh, your headshot?
That was Kwong's advice. I showed him like a goofy one and a serious one. He goes like, go serious.
Yeah, I gotta do the serious one. Yeah.
That's not me, Kwong. This, yeah, Granby Ryder.
Yeah.
It should be with an N, I think, in Granby, but it's probably my fault.
Oh,
Um,
we can fix that.
yeah, so I still, I went to this rodeo, like, way out there off the beaten path where, the real deal cowboys are. That's what they do on a Saturday night. And it's awesome. Like they have signs like, don't go here, physical injury and death may happen, but nobody's policing it. So you can walk right up to where you shouldn't be with a camera and hang on the side of a rail and get right up close to the action. So this guy was just sitting on his horse waiting to go into like lasso some like, young horses, I guess, crazy horses. He's just waiting, and he's lit by the like the stadium lights, and it was in dark night behind him. And it's just like, it's just natural. It's just true to what they do. He's just patiently waiting to go maybe break a rib. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the other big piece that we have. This is 30 by 24. And tell us about preparation a little bit.
So same rodeo. The rodeo started at night, but beforehand, there's like this corral off to the side where the people will run their horses and get them ready to do whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And I found myself over there at golden hour, and just the quality of light alone was worth painting this painting. It's just a really fun color neighborhood to work in. And like I said, it was not something I anticipated putting in a show. So I painted it really kind of simply, but the more I painted on it, the more I found myself like hours falling away. So it's one of those things that just grabbed my attention. Yeah.
Well, so I'm wondering, as we're looking at these images, and this is kind of a question for all of you, I think, is what makes something, and I get that every day in the studio is work, but there's also the days when the hours just go by and you haven't stopped, you didn't eat, you didn't get a glass of water, you didn't, and the sun's down. And what happens in that makes something, like these were your pleasurable paintings?
Sure.
What happens?
I've been working a lot on thinking about how that happens. There's a great book called Flow, and all artists report the better days, the ways you're describing as being in a flow state. And I think that you've got to be like 4% out of your comfort zone. The painting you're attempting needs to be just a little bit harder than your skills provide. If it's easy, then you're bored, and everyone knows when you're bored in a painting. And if it's too hard, you're so frustrated, you feel like you're getting nowhere. So that sweet spot allows you to grow a little bit, stay fully engaged, and let those hours fly by. And also you have to have something about the painting that really makes you want to paint it. You can't just be trying to make a finished product, Every painting should be like an exploration. This one is that spring day is just an exciting painting for me, because I'm a night owl, and a lot of the snow in Colorado melts really fast in the day. So I have to wait till like a humongous snow to find one that's still like, we have full blanketed snow at like 3-4 p.m. So I was just excited to get out there. I've seen Kwong and so many other Colorado artists have fun playing with those simple design of the white shapes of a snowy scene. And I wanted to do it too.
Excellent. Hey, okay, so we are running up to the top of the hour. Oh, Elsa Soroka pipes in here, one of our artists in the Cour Show also. I completely sympathize with artists' stress and anxiety about getting work completed on a timeline. I do too. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand, is that it's, it's one thing to show up at a job and do the accounting work or, things like that. And none of us wants our accountant to get creative, right? But to come into the studio and be creative on demand, there is that extra pressure to it, right? And so I'm wondering, we have just a few minutes left, and if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat box. But I'd love to open it up to the four of you, and I know you're all friends and you've known each other for quite some time, and I'd love for you to just, if you have questions or comments for each other, now's the time. And we've got Kwong stationary once again, so that's exciting.
Well, I would like
I
to,
have to agree with everything else you guys have said though about, I think especially Dan, as I get older, I'm beginning to realize now that the painting for deadlines is so difficult for, it's almost anti-art on some level, all the things that I want to do with painting requires time, but at the same time, I'm to answer what Foster was talking about, that flow state, what you had mentioned earlier about Dan being a student from 9 to 9. I don't want, once I'm in the studio painting, I don't want to stop. I never want to stop. It'll be midnight or 2 a.m. I still don't want to stop. So once I get going, I never get bored. It's always a challenge, and every painting, I'm fully engaged, every one of them. There's never one that I'm not engaged with. But because my brain is so, I have so many different ideas like popping. I'm working this one. I got another one popping over here that I go with this one, and then I take it as far as I can, and then I can't wait to get to the next one. You know what I mean? So, but right now I would love to take a year on a painting and just dive into it. And I've never really had a chance to do that up till just the last 3 or 4 years. I've been doing more of that, but so often though, I know I can do a really good painting in just a couple of days. There are certain paintings that I know I couldn't do any better if you gave me a whole year on it, and it happens and it's just a few days. But other paintings require that kind of time, you know what I mean? But the deadline just really gets in the way of that. It's really difficult. So if you think we're difficult to deal with now, Rose, just wait till later.
Was having the world shut down during COVID, did that help?
We're artists are quarantined anyway,
Right.
for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But your deadlines were taken away. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
it had no effect at all.
No,
Yeah.
not really. We're kind of unsocial bunch anyway.
In a way, it was nice because there were no social events, and you had more time.
Yeah, it's true.
It'd be
Yeah,
a
a lot of the social
But I'd like
stuff.
to say a little, a bit about, I think what you said, Kwong, was really true. Some of the best pieces happen very quickly. And
Yeah.
if you keep working on them, you're just gonna make them worse. That does happen. And what I found with my pieces though is that they may happen kind of quickly, but there's still slight improvements that could be made that I don't see it. It could take a year to see what really needs to be done. So, Adrienne,
Oh my God.
Guest
there's a-
appearance.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
a work of art.
Look
Look
at all
at
these
that.
celebs. Hey, Rose and Dan and Foster.
Raj is on there too.
Raj is on there too. Hey,
Yeah,
Raj.
Hi. Look at Liam. Hi, Liam.
Liam and
Oh, man.
Adrian Stein.
Adrian.
Liam's ready to party. He just had a nice nap. Don't we all wish we could just have a nice hour-long nap?
I'm taking one right after this call.
Oh, I don't blame you, Rose. You deserve it. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you. Okay, Kwong, we just lost you, I think.
Somebody was trying to call me. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, did you let Liam take your phone? I thought
Yeah,
that
no.
was, yeah.
Sorry, Dan. You were saying something good there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, about taking some time, because I've got something to add with that. I think it's, finish what you're saying. It's really important.
well, this is a luxury that I have at this part of my life. It wasn't always that way because I was under pressure to put work out because say I
Right.
sell a picture for $600. The
Mm.
frame
Right.
was $200, and
Mhm.
then what remained was half of that belonged to the art dealer. So it was really, really hard to get started in this business, and I had to mass produce really, and so I think at that point my quality was nowhere near where it is now because I didn't have a choice, but I do have a choice now, and it's a luxury that I've earned over many years, and it's one that I won't give up
Yeah,
because
right.
it helps. It just helps me so much. So I don't want to, you know, try to impose my preferences on artists or suggest things that circumstances won't allow them to do.
Let's go.
So I do understand it when an artist is under pressure to produce. But I just think the more you can shorten that time, that period of your life, and there's ways to do it. You know, you have to live frugally. You know, if each picture you sell just buys you time to paint the next one, and you try to live within your means, things like that. And there are things you can do to make it to buy yourself the time to be able to make your work the best quality that you can make it.
But I also think that you can't let necessity cause you to put out subpar work. Like you can't hurry something along just because a client would be happy. I mean, you can't be, on the other hand, you can't be a perfectionist and try to make it just perfect underneath the timeline, but there's something critical about a painting, some element that you are trying to accomplish. And if you don't say that thing or get that thing accomplished the way you want it to, then it's best to, you know, not deliver it or something. I just don't think you should try to rush bad. You shouldn't try to let your quality suffer because of a timeline.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think for me, and just building on all those things, I think even not just the painting, but the idea of it, you know, you were talking about revisiting old subject matter. I'm working on a big Indian piece right here too. To me, I think if I let the reference itself kind of sit in my head, I want to paint this, and you know, over time, I feel like the design and why the intent and the emotion comes through even more with things that you're that are swirling around your head. And that's and the other thing I know, I was talking with both, you know, all three of you guys, especially with Dan one time about this is hard, you know, finding out a beautiful design for something is hard, and that's okay. There's no expectation that painting is going to get easy, right? Kwang says this all the time. This is hard, your work gets better, but this is hard, but you should enjoy the process. Otherwise you should be doing something else, because you should be compelled to paint, and that's okay that it's hard.
Well, in fact, the way it holds your interest is that it pushes you to your absolute limit.
Right.
That holds your interest.
I think we can all agree. We're all just trying to avoid that thing we've all experienced where you go to someone's house or you see someone you haven't seen in a long time. They have a piece of yours hanging on their wall that you absolutely hate. You know? There's nothing worse. My mom's got these horrible paintings I did in high school all framed up in her living room. And then sometimes I meet people who are like, oh, I saw your work at your mom's house. And I want to crawl out of my skin. Like, we're just trying to avoid that feeling, right?
You know, I think there's so when I write an article for a magazine, I never read it again because I find typos. I'm like, how could I have let that go? So I can't read. So it's that same thing, right? I think that happens to a lot of people. You know, there is a thing too, and Kwang and Dan, you both have been painting for quite some time, and I think both of you could have. Dan, you could have kept painting still lifes with bouquets of flowers and just done that. And Kwang, the big paintings with the still life with the peonies and all that. And I know for a fact with Kwang that I heard people say, I just don't know why he won't just do that. And I'm wondering on this note, and we're over the hour, but I'm wondering if the two of you in particular would talk about subject matter, maybe all four of you talk about subject matter and the importance of the importance of finding that subject matter, because here I am curating a show that's the Western art exhibit. You know, and so, and I can't have nudes and things like that in the show, but I'm wondering if you would talk about that. Like, how do you find that balance in your life and in your studio?
Well, I think what Dan said so beautifully earlier is that for me, painting transcends the subject matter. I'm sorry, I'm having to go, so we're leaving, kind of walking out. But painting for me transcends the subject matter. The subject matter starts the ball rolling, starts the emotional response, and it could be anything. It could be a stump. It could. I'm just looking at the woods around here, and I get the sensations of values and colors and texture, and then you dive into the history behind it and who's walked in here before, you know, and the subject matter. It could be your idea of what beauty is. And so in my early days, I used to chase that, but now I'm seeing beauty everywhere. I mean, it's interesting everywhere. So subject matter is not the point. So if I painted those peonies in the early days because they were beautiful and interesting to me, and I hadn't painted them before, but after I painted, you know, a number of them, and I've dived into them as far as I could, there's no real reason to really paint them again, you know, unless another something else intrigues me about it and it makes me wonder, oh, I wonder if I could do it this way. Then I'll do it. But otherwise, there's no point in do something again. I suppose maybe if you're a composer like Beethoven, you know, he explores one kind of rhythm and he does it to the best of his ability. There's no point in trying it again. You know what I mean? And you want to do it a little different way to see how that would go. But you know, otherwise, subject matter is all around, all the time. You know, it's easy. Subject matter is easy. It's everywhere. Even just to go non-objective is just as interesting to me as looking at something and painting it. So it just depends on the emotional response that I have with it.
Dan, any thoughts to that, subject matter wise?
You could go on painting the exact same thing forever if it held your interest, and that's fine. You'll just keep finding ways to make it, you know, truer and deeper and more beautiful. And that's how you keep doing it. And I don't have any quarrel with painting a vase, a bouquet of flowers at all. It's just that I also get interested in other things. You know,
that's right. That's right.
And so essentially trying to do the same thing with other subjects, which is just trying to continue to deepen my search. And but I wouldn't mind painting a big vase of flowers again. There would be an opportunity to grow if only I could do it extremely well.
Yeah. Okay, so we are over the hour.
Thank you.
Thanks all. I want to thank you all for being here and taking time out of your day. And we've got one more call tomorrow. So, and that'll wrap up the Inside the Artist Studio for us. And maybe we'll have to get Raj's mom on a separate call, and she can tell me. One call we had, all the moms were on. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you so much for all that you do to make these efforts as successful as possible. It's just really impressive. The rare thing in the art business.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Rose.
Completely second that. That's just really amazing. Thank you so much, Rose.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all. That I appreciate that very much. You're just
Thanks for putting up with us.
well, I don't think I have a choice.
Good to see you all. Speak of interesting thing, they're taking me bowling. I haven't done this in 30 years. So we'll see.
Put the bumpers up. Put the bumpers up on the yeah.
All right, you guys.
Do the Big Lebowski thing, Kwong. You can do it. All right, you all take care. Happy New Year.
Take care.
One more call tomorrow. You guys take care. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.